The year was 2147, and Earth had never felt smaller. For centuries, humanity had gazed at the stars, wondering if they were alone in the universe. On a crisp autumn morning, that question was finally answered, but not in the way anyone expected. It began with a flash in the sky, brighter than any star or satellite. People stopped what they were doing to look up. In cities, workers paused on bustling streets. In rural villages, farmers shielded their eyes from the glare. Within moments, a massive object descended into orbit around Earth. It wasn't like anything humanity had ever seen before. The vessel shimmered as though made of crystal, its surface refracting sunlight into dazzling colors that painted the clouds below. Panic spread quickly. Social media erupted with videos and theories. Some thought it was an invasion. Others believed it was a hoax. Governments scrambled to respond, launching satellites and telescopes to study the mysterious craft. But then came the message. A single phrase broadcast across every radio frequency, television channel, and internet connection on the planet. "We observe." The voice was calm, almost melodic, yet devoid of emotion. It spoke in perfect English, though linguists later discovered it simultaneously transmitted in every known human language. Humanity held its breath, waiting for more. And then it came, an explanation. The beings aboard the ship identified themselves as the Lumivern. They described themselves as explorers, travelers who studied civilizations facing extinction-level events. Their purpose? To witness how species reacted when pushed to the brink. But this time, their arrival carried grim news. A rogue black hole, invisible until now, was hurtling through space toward Earth. In 6 months, it would collide with the planet, obliterating all life. The announcement sent shockwaves around the globe. News anchors struggled to maintain composure as they delivered updates. Families huddled together, unsure of what to do next. Riots broke out in some cities, while others fell eerily silent. Yet amidst the chaos, one thing became clear. Humanity had no choice but to face the impossible. Dr. Elena Vasquez, an astrophysicist working at the International Space Research Center, watched the unfolding events from her lab. Her heart raced as she analyzed data confirming the black hole's trajectory. She knew the odds were against them, but she also knew humans had faced seemingly insurmountable challenges before. Turning to her team, she said firmly, "We can't give up. Not yet." Meanwhile, high above the planet, the Lumivern observed silently. Their translucent forms floated within the crystalline ship, watching Earth's reactions with keen interest. They had seen countless worlds crumble under similar circumstances, but something about humanity intrigued them. Perhaps it was the way people banded together despite fear, or perhaps it was the flicker of defiance in their eyes. Whatever it was, the Lumivern decided to stay for now. As night fell over Earth, billions looked up at the glowing orb in the sky. Fear lingered, but so did hope. Humanity had always been defined by its ability to adapt, to fight, and to dream, even in the darkest times. And as the clock began ticking down to the end of the world, one thing was certain. The story of Earth was far from over. The initial shock of the Lumivern's announcement gave way to chaos. Within days, Earth transformed into a battleground, not against invaders from space, but against itself. Governments convened emergency meetings, scientists worked around the clock, and ordinary people tried to make sense of their dwindling future. But unity, which many had hoped would emerge in the face of extinction, proved elusive. At the United Nations headquarters in Geneva, representatives from every nation gathered for an unprecedented summit. The air was thick with tension as leaders argued over how to respond. Some countries demanded immediate evacuation plans, proposing massive spacecraft to ferry survivors to Mars or beyond. Others insisted on focusing resources on finding a way to stop the black hole entirely. Developing nations, already struggling under the weight of poverty and inequality, accused wealthier states of hoarding technology and supplies. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood before the assembly, her voice steady despite the storm brewing around her. She presented her plan to use gravitational slingshot technology, a risky but plausible method to redirect the black hole's path. Her proposal required collaboration on an unprecedented scale, pooling resources from multiple nations and launching a daring mission into deep space. While some delegates nodded in agreement, others dismissed her idea as impractical or too expensive. Outside the conference halls, public unrest grew. Protests erupted in major cities, with crowds chanting slogans like "Save us" and "No more lies." Conspiracy theories spread faster than facts, fueled by social media algorithms designed to amplify outrage. Some believed the black hole was a hoax created to distract from economic collapse. Others claimed the Lumiverne were secretly manipulating events to test humanity's weaknesses. In Tokyo, Captain Marcus Kane watched the news from his small apartment, nursing a glass of whiskey. A retired space pilot haunted by past failures, he had long since withdrawn from society. But when images of the protests flashed across his screen, ordinary people screaming for answers, he felt a pang of guilt. He couldn't ignore the sinking feeling that this might be his last chance to make amends. Meanwhile, Zara Lin worked tirelessly in a cramped engineering lab in Shanghai. At just 24 years old, she was part of a team tasked with developing new propulsion systems for potential escape missions. Her hands moved deftly over blueprints, but her mind kept drifting back to her family, who had perished during a failed Mars colonization effort years earlier. This time, she vowed, things would be different. As tensions escalated, the Lumiverne continued their silent observation. From their crystalline ship, they monitored Earth's every move, recording data and analyzing human behavior. They noted the divisions tearing societies apart, but also saw glimpses of resilience. Volunteers distributing food to panicked citizens, teachers comforting frightened children, and strangers helping one another through power outages caused by overloaded grids. One evening, Malik Singh, a seasoned diplomat from India, addressed a crowd in New Delhi. Standing atop a makeshift stage, he spoke passionately about the need for cooperation. "We are all Earthlings first," he declared, his voice echoing through the square. "If we let fear divide us, then we have already lost. But if we stand together, there is still hope." His words resonated deeply, sparking small acts of kindness and solidarity worldwide. Neighbors shared what little they had. Online forums filled with ideas for solving the crisis. Still, skepticism lingered. Could humanity truly come together in time? Or would its fractured nature seal its fate? High above, the Lumiverne observed silently, their curiosity growing. Humanity was unpredictable, chaotic, and flawed, but it was also capable of extraordinary courage. And as the clock ticked closer to doom, even the most skeptical among them began to wonder, would Earth rise to meet the challenge, or crumble under the weight of its own fears? As chaos gripped Earth, unlikely heroes began to emerge from the shadows. Among them was Captain Marcus Kane, a man who had spent years running from his past. Once celebrated as one of humanity's finest pilots, he had retreated into solitude after a failed rescue mission left him scared, both physically and emotionally. But when the Lumiverne's announcement shattered the world's sense of security, something stirred within him. Watching news reports of terrified families and desperate scientists reminded him of why he became a pilot in the first place, to protect people. It wasn't long before Malik Singh, the charismatic diplomat, tracked Marcus down. Standing outside his Tokyo apartment, Malik didn't mince words. "We need you," he said firmly, "not just as a pilot, but as someone who knows how to lead under pressure." At first, Marcus refused, claiming he was no hero. But Malik persisted, reminding him that humanity's survival depended on individuals stepping up, not waiting for others to act. Reluctantly, Marcus agreed to join the multinational team tasked with deploying Dr. Elena Vasquez's gravitational slingshot device. The mission required assembling a crew capable of handling extreme conditions, advanced technology, and the psychological toll of facing near-certain death. Alongside Marcus came Zara Lin, the young engineer whose determination had caught the attention of global leaders. Though inexperienced compared to some of her peers, her innovative thinking made her indispensable. The team quickly grew to include experts from around the world. There was Dr. Raj Patel, an astrophysicist from India known for his work on black holes, Lieutenant Sofia Alvarez, a former military strategist with unmatched tactical skills, and Amir Hassan, a robotics specialist whose drones could navigate treacherous environments. Each member brought unique strengths, but they also carried personal burdens, losses, regrets, and fears that threatened to weigh them down. Training began immediately, taking place aboard the EOS, a state-of-the-art starship hastily retrofitted for the mission. Located at a remote spaceport in Kazakhstan, the vessel served as both their home and their lifeline. Days blurred into nights as the crew drilled tirelessly, preparing for every possible scenario. Tensions ran high, especially between Marcus and Sophia, whose blunt demeanor clashed with his reserved nature. Yet even amid disagreements, a fragile camaraderie began to form. Meanwhile, the Lumivern continued their enigmatic surveillance. Without warning, they began projecting strange simulations onto cities worldwide. Virtual disasters designed to test humanity's resolve. In New York, towering waves crashed through skyscrapers, forcing residents to flee. In Nairobi, earthquakes split the ground open, trapping thousands beneath rubble. These events weren't real, but the fear and panic they caused were all too genuine. Yet, amidst the terror, moments of courage shone brightly. In Rio de Janeiro, a group of teenagers used makeshift rafts to rescue stranded neighbors during a simulated flood. In Sydney, elderly volunteers formed human chains to guide disoriented survivors to safety. Back in Geneva, scientists pored over data collected during these simulations, searching for patterns or hidden messages embedded by the Lumivern. One particularly striking incident occurred in Seoul, where a classroom of children found themselves trapped inside a collapsing building in one of the simulations, with no adults nearby. The kids worked together to construct an escape route using desks and chairs. Their ingenuity impressed not only their teachers but also the Lumivern, who recorded the event with great interest. Back aboard the EOS, the crew watched footage of these acts of bravery. For the first time since the crisis began, hope flickered in their hearts. Perhaps humanity wasn't doomed after all. As Marcus stared out at the stars, he realized that this mission wasn't just about saving Earth. It was about proving that even in the darkest times, people could rise above their flaws and shine. The countdown to launch approached, and the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on the crew. They knew failure wasn't an option, but as they prepared to face the void, they took solace in one truth. Humanity's greatest strength had always been its ability to come together, even when the odds seemed impossible. The Lumivern's simulations continued to unfold across Earth, each one more intense than the last. Cities trembled under artificial earthquakes, oceans surged with phantom tsunamis, and skies darkened with storms that never touched the ground. These virtual disasters weren't just tests. They were mirrors, reflecting humanity's deepest fears and highest aspirations. And through it all, the Lumivern watched silently, their crystalline ship hovering like a silent judge. For the crew of the EOS, these events became both inspiration and warning. Every night, they gathered in the ship's common area to watch footage of humanity's response. Some clips showed chaos, looting, panic, and violence, but others revealed moments of breathtaking courage. In Paris, firefighters braved collapsing buildings to save trapped civilians. In Johannesburg, strangers formed human chains to pull survivors from flooded streets. These acts reminded the crew why they had volunteered for this mission, because even in the face of despair, people could find ways to help one another. But the simulations also exposed cracks in humanity's resolve. In Moscow, a wealthy businessman barricaded himself inside a luxury hotel while ignoring pleas for help from those outside. In Los Angeles, armed gangs seized control of food supplies, leaving vulnerable communities to fend for themselves. The Lumivern recorded everything, their glowing forms flickering faintly as if processing what they saw. Were humans capable of overcoming their worst instincts, or would greed and selfishness define them in their final days? Back aboard the Eos, tensions simmered among the crew. Marcus Kane struggled to reconcile his growing sense of purpose with the guilt he still carried from his past failures. During training exercises, he pushed himself harder than anyone else, determined not to let fear hold him back again. Zara Lynn, meanwhile, poured her energy into perfecting the gravitational slingshot device. Late at night, she sat hunched over blueprints, tweaking designs and running calculations. Her hands shook sometimes, not from exhaustion, but from the weight of knowing billions of lives depended on her work. One evening, an unexpected simulation struck close to home. The crew woke to find their own ship surrounded by projections of swirling debris and fire. Alarms blared as holographic flames licked at the walls, and the floor tilted unnaturally beneath their feet. It was a test designed by the Lumivern, to see how the team would respond under pressure. "Stay calm," Marcus barked, taking charge. "This isn't real, but our reactions are." Sofia Alvarez immediately sprang into action, directing everyone to secure loose equipment before it could cause injury. Amir Hassan activated his drones, using them to map the simulated damage and identify safe zones. Meanwhile, Dr. Raj Patel worked with Zara to stabilize the ship's systems, ensuring the illusion didn't interfere with actual operations. As the simulation intensified, cracks began to show. Sophia snapped at Marcus when his orders conflicted with hers, and Zara froze momentarily, overwhelmed by the chaos. But despite their differences, the crew pulled together. By the time the projection faded, they had passed the test, not perfectly, but well enough to earn a nod of approval from the Lumivern. Afterward, Malik Singh addressed the group. "Today proved something important," he said, his voice steady. "We're not perfect. None of us are. But we can rely on each other. That's what will get us through this." His words resonated deeply, especially with Marcus. For so long, he had believed leadership meant carrying the burden alone. Now he realized that true strength came from trusting others and letting them share the load. High above, the Lumivern observed the crew's progress with growing interest. They had seen civilizations crumble under similar trials, but humanity's resilience intrigued them. Perhaps, they thought, this species was worth watching just a little longer. As the countdown to launch drew nearer, the crew prepared for the ultimate trial, facing the black hole itself. They knew the odds were against them, but they also knew one thing for certain. Their success or failure would define not just their lives, but the legacy of an entire planet. The day of the launch arrived, and the world held its breath. The Eos stood poised on the launch pad in Kazakhstan, its sleek hull gleaming under the pale morning sun. Crowds gathered miles away, their faces a mix of hope and dread, as they watched humanity's last chance prepare for departure. Inside the ship, the crew moved with quiet determination, each member focused on the monumental task ahead. Marcus Kane stood at the helm, his hand steady on the controls despite the storm of emotions raging inside him. He glanced at Zara Lynn, seated nearby, her eyes fixed intently on the monitors displaying data streams from Earth. She had spent countless nights refining the gravitational slingshot device, but now that the moment was here, she looked smaller somehow. Fragile even. Yet there was no time for doubt. They were about to leave behind everything they knew and venture into the unknown. As the countdown began, Malik Singh addressed the crew one final time. "This isn't just a mission," he said, his voice calm but firm. "It's a chance to show the universe what we're made of. Whatever happens out there, remember why we're doing this. For everyone back home." His words hung in the air, grounding them all in purpose. With a deafening roar, the Eos lifted off, piercing the atmosphere and leaving Earth far behind. For hours, the crew worked in silence, monitoring systems and adjusting trajectories. But as they approached the edge of the solar system, strange anomalies began to appear. Time seemed to stretch and warp. Instruments flickered unpredictably. Then came the whispers, soft, indistinct murmurs that echoed through the ship like voices carried by the wind. "What is that?" Zara asked, her voice trembling as she turned to Marcus. Before anyone could answer, the Lumivern revealed themselves. Their translucent forms materialized in the center of the command deck, shimmering faintly as if lit from within. The crew froze, stunned by the sudden presence of the alien observers. "We are here to ensure your journey remains instructive," one of the Lumiverns said, its melodic voice resonating without sound. "Your species has shown promise, but the void will test you further." Tension crackled in the air. Sofia Alvarez stepped forward, her sharp tone cutting through the unease. "If you're so interested in us, why don't you help? Why just watch?" The Lumivern tilted their heads, as if considering her question. "Our role is not to intervene, but to witness. Your actions will speak louder than our assistance ever could." Though unnerved, the crew pressed on. As they drew closer to the black hole, the ship encountered phenomena beyond comprehension. Swirling vortexes of light danced outside the windows, distorting reality itself. Gravitational forces pulled at the vessel, threatening to tear it apart. Zara worked furiously to recalibrate the engines, sweat beading on her forehead as she fought to keep the EOs stable. Then came the discovery that changed everything. While inspecting the ship's exterior cameras, Amir Hassan noticed something unsettling. Tiny, insect-like drones embedded in the hull. Upon closer inspection, he realized they belonged to the Lumivern. "They've been watching us this whole time," he muttered, anger flashing in his eyes. "Every move we make, they're recording it." The revelation sparked heated debate among the crew. Some felt betrayed, while others argued it didn't matter. What choice did they have but to continue? As the black hole loomed larger in the viewport, its immense gravity pulling at their very souls, Marcus spoke up. "We can't let them, or anyone, define us. We're doing this for Earth, for every person who's counting on us." His words silenced the room. Despite the fear and uncertainty, the crew nodded in agreement. They had come too far to turn back now. Together, they steeled themselves for what lay ahead, the greatest challenge humanity had ever faced. High above, the Lumivern observed silently, their curiosity deepening. Humanity was proving more complex and more fascinating than they had anticipated. As the EOs approached the black hole, reality itself seemed to unravel. The crew stared out of the viewport in awe and terror as the massive void loomed before them, its edges swirling with light and shadow. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, a churning maelstrom of energy that defied logic. Time felt distorted. Seconds stretched into minutes, and colors shifted unpredictably around the ship. The Lumivern's drones continued their silent observation, embedded in the hull like ghostly parasites. Dr. Raj Patel, his face pale but resolute, studied the readings on his console. "The gravitational forces are stronger than we anticipated," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "If we don't adjust our trajectory soon, we'll be pulled in." Zara Lynn worked furiously beside him, recalibrating the gravitational slingshot device. Her hands moved quickly over the controls, her mind racing to process the overwhelming data streaming in. "We can still do this," she muttered under her breath, though whether she was trying to convince herself or the others remained unclear. Marcus Kane stood at the helm, gripping the controls tightly. His knuckles turned white as he fought to keep the ship steady against the immense pull of the black hole. "Stay focused," he barked, his voice cutting through the tension. "We've trained for this. Trust the plan." But trust wasn't easy when faced with the incomprehensible. Strange whispers filled the air again, louder this time. Fragmented voices speaking in languages no one recognized. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, unsure if the sounds were real or a trick of their minds. Even Sofia Alvarez, usually unshakable, looked uneasy as she monitored the ship's structural integrity. Then, without warning, the Lumivern appeared once more. This time, they didn't just observe, they spoke. Their melodic voices echoed through the command deck, filling the space with an eerie calm. "You have reached the threshold," one of them said. "Few civilizations dare approach such destruction. Fewer still survive it." Malik Singh stepped forward, his expression firm despite the fear lurking beneath. "Why are you really here?" he demanded. "Are you just spectators, or is there more to this?" The Lumavern paused, their forms shimmering faintly. "We collect stories," another replied, "of species who face extinction and choose how to meet it. If you succeed, your tale will inspire others. If you fail," its voice trailed off, leaving the implication hanging heavy in the air. The revelation sent a chill through the crew. They weren't just fighting for Earth, they were playing a role in something far greater. For some, it added weight to their mission. For others, it sparked anger. "This isn't fair," Amir Hassan snapped, slamming his fist against a console. "How can you sit back and watch while we risk everything? You could help us." The Lumavern tilted their heads, as if considering his words. "Help would diminish the value of your actions," they responded. "It is not the tools you use, but the choices you make, that define you." Their cryptic answer did little to soothe the crew's frustration, but there was no time to dwell on it. Alarms blared suddenly as the black hole's gravity intensified, pulling the EOs dangerously close. Zara shouted instructions, her voice sharp and urgent. "Activate the stabilizers. Redirect power to the thrusters." Everyone sprang into action, working together with precision born of countless hours of training. Marcus wrestled with the controls, sweat dripping down his face as he guided the ship along a narrow path between safety and oblivion. Outside, streaks of light bent and twisted, creating surreal patterns that made it hard to tell up from down. For a moment, it seemed like they might lose control. The ship shuddered violently, throwing the crew off balance. But then, slowly, the vibrations subsided. Zara let out a shaky breath. "We're clear, for now." The crew collapsed into their seats, exhaustion etched on their faces. They had survived the first encounter with the black hole, but they all knew the hardest part was yet to come. As they prepared for the next phase of the mission, the Lumavern watched silently, their curiosity deepening. Humanity had shown resilience, ingenuity, and courage. But the true test was only beginning. The crew of the EOs had barely caught their breath when disaster struck again. The gravitational slingshot device, humanity's last hope, began to malfunction. Warning lights flashed across the control panels, and alarms blared relentlessly. Zara Lynn frantically scanned the diagnostics, her fingers flying over the keyboard. "There's a power surge in the stabilizer module," she shouted. "If we don't fix it, the entire system will fail." Marcus Kane clenched his jaw, his eyes darting between the viewport and the readouts. Outside, the black hole loomed larger than ever, its pull growing stronger with each passing second. "How long do we have?" he asked, his voice tight with urgency. "Minutes," Zara replied grimly. "Maybe less." The crew sprang into action, working together to contain the damage. Sofia Alvarez directed Amir Hassan to reroute auxiliary power, while Dr. Raj Patel monitored the ship's structural integrity. But as they worked, it became clear that someone would need to go outside the ship to manually recalibrate the stabilizers, a task made perilous by the intense radiation emanating from the black hole. "I'll do it," Marcus said without hesitation. He grabbed a spacesuit and headed for the airlock. But Malik Singh stepped in front of him. "No," Malik said firmly, his tone leaving no room for argument. "You're the pilot. If anything happens to you, we lose our best chance at getting out of here alive." Marcus opened his mouth to protest, but Malik cut him off. "This isn't about me. It's about what needs to be done. Let me handle this." Before anyone could stop him, Malik suited up and stepped into the airlock. As the outer door opened, the void greeted him, a vast expanse of darkness punctuated by the swirling chaos of the black hole. Clinging to the ship's hull, he moved carefully toward the damaged stabilizer module, guided by Amir's instructions over the comms. Inside the ship, the crew watched anxiously as Malik worked. His movements were deliberate but slow, hindered by the bulky suit and the crushing gravity. Radiation levels spiked dangerously high, and static crackled through the communication line. "You're almost there, Malik," Zora called out, her voice trembling. "Just one more adjustment." Malik didn't respond immediately. Instead, he paused, looking out at the black hole. For a moment, he felt an overwhelming sense of insignificance, and yet also a profound connection to something greater. This was his purpose, his chance to leave behind a legacy of courage. With shaking hands, he completed the final recalibration. "It's done," he said softly, his voice barely audible over the static. "Get out of here." Back inside the ship, Zora fought back tears as she initiated the reboot sequence. The stabilizers hummed back to life, just as the radiation overwhelmed Malik's suit. His vitals flatlined on the monitor, and silence fell over the crew. "He saved us," Zora whispered, her voice breaking. "He gave us a chance." Marcus clenched his fists, grief warring with determination. "Then we honor him by finishing this mission." As the Eos stabilized, the Lumivern materialized once more. Their forms shimmered faintly, and for the first time, there was a hint of emotion in their melodic voices. "Your kind demonstrates remarkable resolve," one of them said. "Even in the face of loss, you persevere." No one responded. There was nothing left to say. The crew focused on preparing for the next phase of the mission, their hearts heavy but resolute. Malik's sacrifice had bought them precious time, but the battle was far from over. High above Earth, news of Malik's bravery spread quickly. Billions mourned his loss, but his selflessness inspired countless others to act with courage and compassion. In cities around the world, people came together to support one another, united by the belief that even in the darkest moments, humanity could shine. For the crew of the Eos, there was no turning back now. They carried not only the weight of their mission, but also the memory of a man who had given everything for the future of his species. And as they prepared to face the black hole once more, they vowed to make his sacrifice count. With Malik's sacrifice still heavy in their hearts, the crew of the Eos prepared for the most critical phase of their mission. The gravitational slingshot device was operational again, but deploying it near the black hole carried immense risks. Every calculation had to be precise. Every decision could mean life or death. For them and for Earth. Zara Lynn sat at her station, her hands trembling as she reviewed the final sequence. She knew what was at stake. If the device failed, the black hole would continue its deadly course toward Earth. But even if it succeeded, there was no guarantee they'd survive the process. As she ran simulations, a secondary anomaly appeared on her screen, a smaller singularity forming dangerously close to the primary black hole. It was unstable, threatening to collapse, and create a catastrophic chain reaction that could destroy not just Earth, but the entire region of space. "We've got a problem," Zara said, her voice tight with urgency. "This new singularity is going to destabilize everything unless we deal with it first." Marcus Kane leaned over her shoulder, studying the data. "What are our options?" Zara hesitated, then spoke firmly. "We can deploy explosive charges to collapse the singularity before it grows too large. But someone will have to stay behind to ensure the detonation sequence completes. Once the charges are set, there won't be time to escape." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what she was saying. Whoever stayed behind wouldn't make it back alive. "I'll do it," Marcus said after a long pause. His tone left no room for argument. "I've been running from my past long enough. This is where I stand." "No," Zara interrupted sharply, standing up to face him. Her eyes burned with determination. "You're the leader of this mission. Without you, the rest of us don't stand a chance. Let me handle this. My calculations got us into this mess. I'll fix it." Before Marcus could protest, Zora grabbed a toolkit and headed for the airlock. Amir Hassan tried to stop her, but she shook her head, "Trust me," she said simply. "I know what I'm doing." As Zara stepped outside, the void greeted her once more. Clinging to the ship's hull, she navigated toward the growing singularity. Radiation levels were dangerously high, and the pull of the black hole made movement excruciatingly difficult. Back inside, the crew watched anxiously as she planted the charges, her movements slow but steady. "Almost there," Zara said through the comms, her voice strained but calm. "Just one more charge." Suddenly, a burst of energy from the singularity sent shockwaves rippling through space. The EOs rocked violently, throwing the crew off balance. Outside, Zara fought to stay anchored, her suit's thrusters struggling against the turbulence. "Zara, get out of there," Marcus shouted, panic edging his voice. "No," she replied firmly. "If I leave now, the charges won't hold. This has to work." Inside the ship, the Lumivern materialized again, their forms flickering faintly. They observed silently, their curiosity mingled with something resembling admiration. Humanity's willingness to sacrifice for the greater good continued to intrigue them. Finally, Zara secured the last charge. "Detonation sequence initiated," she announced, her voice soft but resolute. "Get out of here. Tell Earth. Tell them we didn't give up." Tears streamed down the crew's faces as they powered up the engines and began their retreat. Behind them, the charges detonated, collapsing the singularity in a brilliant flash of light. The black hole stabilized momentarily, giving them the window they needed to activate the gravitational slingshot device. As the EOs sped away, the crew looked back at the swirling void, one last tribute to Zara's bravery. She had given everything to save them, and now it was up to them to finish what she started. High above Earth, humanity held its breath, watching and waiting. The story of Zara's sacrifice spread quickly, inspiring millions to keep hope alive. For the crew of the EOs, there was no turning back now. They carried not only the weight of their mission, but also the memory of two heroes who had shown the universe what humanity was truly capable of. The crew of the EOs held their breath as the gravitational slingshot device activated. The ship shuddered violently, caught in the immense pull of the black hole's gravity. Outside the viewport, the swirling vortex of light and shadow seemed to stretch endlessly, distorting reality itself. For a moment, it felt like they were being pulled into oblivion. "Hold on," Marcus Kane shouted, gripping the controls with white-knuckled hands. His voice was steady despite the chaos around him. "We're almost through." Zora's sacrifice had bought them this chance, and Malik's bravery had ensured they reached this point. Now, it was up to the remaining crew to see the mission through. Every calculation, every adjustment, they all hinged on this final moment. Inside the ship, alarms blared as systems strained under the immense forces. Dr. Raj Patil monitored the readings closely, his face pale but focused. "The trajectory is holding," he called out. "If we can maintain this angle, we might just redirect it." Amir Hassan worked furiously at his station, rerouting power to keep the engine stable. Sofia Alvarez barked orders, her sharp tone cutting through the tension. "Keep those thrusters online. We lose propulsion, and we're done for." For what felt like an eternity, the EOs fought against the black hole's pull. Then, slowly but surely, the impossible happened. The massive void began to shift, its deadly path altering ever so slightly. The gravitational slingshot worked. The black hole moved away from Earth, its collision course disrupted. Cheers erupted aboard the EOs, but they were short-lived. The crew knew their journey wasn't over yet. They still had to escape the black hole's gravitational field before it could destabilize again. With renewed determination, Marcus guided the ship along a narrow escape route, pushing the engines to their limits. As they broke free from the black hole's influence, the Lumivern appeared once more. Their translucent forms shimmered faintly, and for the first time, there was a sense of respect in their melodic voices. "You have succeeded where others have failed," one of them said. "Your species has demonstrated courage, ingenuity, and selflessness. Marcus turned to face them, his expression weary but resolute. "Does that mean you'll finally help us? Share your knowledge or technology?" The Lumivern tilted their heads, as if considering his request. "Our role is not to intervene," they replied. "But your actions have earned you something rare. A gift." With that, they transmitted a data stream directly into the ship's computers. It contained blueprints for advanced energy systems, sustainable technologies, and even interstellar travel designs. Before the crew could respond, the Lumivern vanished, their crystalline ship ascending into the stars. For a moment, silence filled the command deck. Then, slowly, realization dawned. Humanity had been given a second chance, not just to survive, but to thrive. Back on Earth, celebrations erupted as news of the mission's success spread. Cities lit up with fireworks, and people poured into streets, hugging strangers and crying tears of relief. Monuments were erected overnight to honor Malik and Zara, whose sacrifices had saved billions. Schools taught their stories, ensuring future generations would remember the heroes who stared into the void and refused to back down. For the crew of the Eos, returning home was bittersweet. They carried the weight of loss, but also the pride of knowing they had changed the course of history. As the ship descended through Earth's atmosphere, Marcus looked out at the planet below. It was beautiful, a fragile blue sphere teeming with life. And now, thanks to their efforts, it had a future. High above, the Lumivern observed silently, their curiosity satisfied. For now, humanity had proven itself capable of greatness, even in the face of impossible odds. As they departed, they left behind not just a gift, but a legacy. The story of a species that rose to meet its greatest challenge and emerged stronger than ever. Years passed, and Earth transformed in ways no one could have imagined. The knowledge gifted by the Lumivern became the foundation for a new era of human progress. Advanced energy systems powered cities without harming the environment, while sustainable technologies revitalized ecosystems long thought lost. Humanity's reach extended beyond its home planet, with colonies flourishing on Mars and beyond. Yet, even as they ventured into the stars, people never forgot the sacrifices that made it all possible. In every corner of the globe, monuments stood tall to honor Malik Singh and Zara Lin. Their names were etched into history books, taught in classrooms alongside tales of their bravery. In New Delhi, a statue of Malik gazed skyward, his arms outstretched as if embracing the future he had helped secure. In Shanghai, a sleek museum housed Zora's original blueprints and tools, preserving her ingenuity for generations to come. These memorials serve not just as tributes, but as reminders of what humanity could achieve when united by purpose. Captain Marcus Kane retired from space travel after returning to Earth, though he remained an advocate for exploration and unity. He often spoke at global conferences, sharing stories of the mission and urging leaders to work together for the greater good. "We faced extinction," he would say, his voice steady yet filled with emotion. "But we didn't let fear divide us. That's how we survived, not through technology or weapons, but through courage and cooperation." The crew of the Eos stayed close over the years, bound by shared experiences and unbreakable bonds. Dr. Raj Patel dedicated his life to studying black holes, using the Lumivern's data to unlock mysteries once thought unsolvable. Sofia Alvarez became a mentor to young astronauts, instilling in them the discipline and resilience she had learned aboard the Eos. Amir Hassan founded a robotics institute, designing machines capable of aiding humanity in its journey across the cosmos. Meanwhile, the Lumivern's records of humanity's struggle spread throughout the galaxy. Civilizations light years away heard the story of Earth, a species pushed to the brink, yet refusing to surrender. Some found inspiration in humanity's determination. Others saw cautionary lessons in their flaws. Regardless, the tale resonated deeply, reminding countless beings that even in the face of despair, hope could prevail. Back on Earth, humanity continued to evolve. Conflicts still arose, and challenges remained, but there was a newfound sense of purpose. People worked harder to understand one another, to bridge divides, and to build a better world. The phrase, "a new dawn," became synonymous with this era, a testament to humanity's resilience and potential. One evening, decades after the mission, Marcus stood atop a hill overlooking a bustling city. Lights twinkled below, and spacecraft streaked across the night sky. He smiled faintly, thinking of Malik and Zara. Though they were gone, their legacy lived on, not just in monuments or stories, but in the spirit of humanity itself. High above, the Lumiverne watched silently from afar. They had moved on to observe other civilizations, but Earth lingered in their thoughts. Humanity was flawed, chaotic, and unpredictable, but it was also extraordinary. And as the stars shone brightly in the endless void, the Lumiverne knew one thing for certain. The universe was richer for having witnessed the rise of such a remarkable species. Humanity's story was far from over. But now, it was a story written not just by fear or survival, but by hope, courage, and the unyielding belief that even in the darkest times, light could be found.